noticed that my friends who lived with me in South Central were getting locked up at a young age, whereas my friends in Pasadena, I never saw the police when I was at school. There was really no police presence. My name is Ariel Moore. I'm from Los Angeles, all over Los Angeles, but primarily I grew up with my grandparents in South Central, and I also kind of was a transplant with my aunt in Pasadena. And I raised that because growing up I had a very kind of first eye observation of the difference between class compositions and outcomes. As a youth, I had an incarcerated parent, and so that was incredibly difficult. And I think probably one of my biggest fears as a kid was getting incarcerated myself. And so I kind of became your prototypical neoliberal, doing the right things or thinking I was doing the right things all the time, which then led me to an early career at a group home that had youth that were both probation as well as detained by the state. And that really taught me a lot about youth incarceration and the ways in which the system just kind of perpetuates institutionalization. And so you notice that kids who became involved with the police as early as 12 or 13 for something as simple as truancy, suddenly having really, really long records and consistent revolving involvement with probation. And it almost, to me, started to feel like a setup, which just made me curious about incarceration generally and how the system works. Yes, in particular. It seemed like probation was never ending and that both judges and probation officers and social workers were all working together to make sure that youth stay on probation until they turn 18. So I have a lot of guilt and shame about my involvement of working at a group home. At the time, I wasn't able to articulate the ways in which I was prioritizing my own financial cost of living versus like the humanity of the youth that I worked with. And so when I came out of that, I just committed to a life of making sure that I repair the harm that I feel like I was complicit in. And for me, being a part of both Community Scholars as well as this Extension Fellowship has been incredible, just to spend time with people who understand both the function of incarceration because of their lived experience, but then also the labor side of it, working with folks who understand the harms that they were complicit in and are really interested in changing that and being leaders. So initially, I think I had a very kind of rigid view that although I worked with youth who were involved with probation, that I kind of drew the line that I would never be a corrections officer. So sharing space with folks who have actually worked inside of the prison or inside the halls has really just shown me about how prison in general strips everyone of their humanity, whoever participates, whether that's on a labor side or whether you're incarcerated, and that is the function of the system. And so the more that I'm able to hear folks' stories about how they got involved, typically it's always wanting to help or some version of saviorism, but then quickly learning that that's not what incarceration exists to do. It's not here to save people, it's actually here to harm people. I always like to think of it in historical context. So abolition was for sure really scary back when we think about slavery, but again, it was necessary. And I think that we as a society have to prioritize folks' humanity and really get critical about disposability culture and who we think deserves to have a human life versus who we think doesn't. And I think the ways in which our current incarceration system resembles so much of slavery demands that we have the same type of solutions. I'm really hopeful that abolition is possible and that folks will start seeing kids as kids. Children are incredibly resilient, but most importantly, redeemable. And I hope that this project, and the more that we bring awareness on the dangers of youth incarceration, that we can stop it at scale, hopefully first in Los Angeles County, then statewide, and then hopefully nationally.